Welcome to the 24th reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Other subjects were not without frustrations. Geography, an immense world of confusing maps. Latitude, longitude, and the points of the compass escaped me, and in short, I didn't know one end of planet Earth from the other, or where I fitted into the complicated puzzle. History had always attracted me, more a case of being fascinated by the characters of the past and their escapades than learning dates off by heart. The teacher seemed to have an aversion to girls. He enjoyed ridiculing us, although he wasn't too easy on the boys either. He often lost his temper and threw wooden blackboard dusters at their heads when they misbehaved, grabbed them by their necks and pinned them up against the wall until they begged for mercy. Violence seemed to suit him, not only in the history books, but in his day-to-day life. His treatment of the boys wasn't unusual. It wouldn't have done them any good to complain, as corporal punishment was condoned and frequently carried out on both sexes. Boys were caned on outstretched hands for their indiscretions. The offenders returned from the headmaster's study as heroes. Girls received the slipper, less painful but much more embarrassing, and no glory at all. The official slipper for the job was an enormous white canvas men's plimsoll, which sat on top of the teacher's tall desk in full view of the class. It took turns going from one classroom to another, although it did seem to spend a large amount of time in hours. I only received it once, called to the front of the class, told to face the blackboard, bend over and lift up my skirt, exposing my navy blue school uniform knickers to the entire class, to receive a few whacks of the slipper on my backside. It stung a little, but I'd had worse from my dad. The public humiliation hurt the most. Even so, I harboured a hope that undergoing that rite of passage might endear me a little to my classmates. Science became an art class for me. Rather than take part in the experiments involving Bunsen burners and other apparatus, none of which I understood, I derived immense pleasure from doing freestyle drawings of them. Biology also gave me the opportunity to draw beautiful illustrations of flowers. Religious instruction was taught by my English teacher. Familiar with many of the Bible stories, I took pride in maintaining my exercise books in a neat fashion, with none of the usual outbursts of deliberate, sloppy writing and carelessness, often found walking across the pages of my other books. Safe and secure in that class, as if the godlight that twinkled above me as a small child still watched over me. However, my teacher remained as remote towards me as in English class. Needlework definitely ranked alongside maths as a subject to be feared. My creativity flew out the window the moment I entered the room. I despised the perfectionist teacher from day one, but I wasn't the only girl with negative feelings towards her, from comments shared and overheard. Housecraft, dubbed domestic science, which included cookery, or what I sarcastically called the science of scrubbing tables and draining boards, became the class where I experienced some of the worst bullying. When we queued up for our supplies, the bullies pushed me to the back. By the time I reached the front, only the dregs were left. Being last meant having to use the worst cooker. Why did there even have to be a cooker that didn't work properly? As time went on, I must have shown some signs of apathy because my cookery teacher called me to stay behind after class one day. She said to me, quite seriously, "Would you like to go to a different school?" "Why?" I said, taken aback by her question. Maybe I had done something bad and didn't know it. Or perhaps she didn't want me in her class anymore for some reason. I could think of a few reasons as to why she might want me gone. One was that I had been falsely accused of stealing money brought by the girls for cooking supplies. Huge apologies from the teacher and the girls, but still. Why was I even suspected of something like that if there wasn't something wrong about me? "I thought you might want to go somewhere new to get a fresh start." "No, I don't think so," I said, and blushed, as was my habit. "It's just that I've noticed you don't seem to be very happy here. Are you all right?" She looked at me with concern in her eyes, but I didn't hold her gaze for too long. "I'm fine. Can I go now?" and left with her permission. How stupid can she be to suggest that going to a different school will fix my problems? I've been to 6 schools so far, and I don't think one more will make any difference. She never mentioned it anymore, and that suited me. I have to give her some credit, though, for being the only teacher in the school in the 4 years I did my time within its red brick walls, who attempted to probe a little into what was going on in my head. It wasn't her fault that by the time she thought to ask, I'd long given up on anything ever becoming better. Physical education was a mixture of successes and failures. I could run fast, but rarely finished first in races because of my short legs. By far the biggest failure were my baggy navy blue knickers, which could be stretched all the way up to my neck with my arms tucked inside. My mother insisted on buying them 4 sizes too large for me so I could grow into them. We girls had to remove our skirts and use our knickers for shorts. Most embarrassing. Last to be picked for teams, games lost their interest for me. How can my heart be in it, playing on a team where my presence isn't wanted but ordered by the teacher, because otherwise I'll be standing around like a fool doing nothing. At age 12, clocks mystified me. I may have been instructed in the past on what those little numbers stood for, circling the clock face, but it hadn't registered. By secondary school, I expect one was supposed to have learnt such a lesson, but it came as a shock to me that I didn't know what all the other children apparently knew. One of our teachers picked a different child each day to leave the room and check the time by the school clock in the hall. He obviously didn't own a watch. This checking of the clock began to worry me, as I knew it was only a matter of time, something I obviously was ignorant of, before I would be asked to do the job. I asked my brother if he would teach me how to tell the time. He still attended St. George's Junior School, yet managed to master what had eluded me. At first, David refused, but I promised to pay him out of my pocket money, so he gave in. He was very patient with me and explained it well. I could have asked him to teach me maths as well, but go without pocket money for the rest of my childhood. As I predicted, the day came for my turn to go to the hall and check the school clock. I had barely grasped the concept, but went out obediently and figured it out the best I could. Happily, I returned and announced, "It's 2:45. so proud of myself as I said it, for once on a par with everybody else in the room. As it turned out, I hadn't quite figured out the hour hand. When the teacher, not unkindly, said, "I think you mean 4, don't you?" I quickly said, "Oh, sorry, I meant to say 4, and waited for the usual ridicule. But he didn't say anything mean, and none of the children sniggered. I sat down in my seat, elated. For once I'd been confident in doing something, and although I made a mistake, it wasn't the end of the world. Why do I always make such a big deal about everything? The unanswerable question. Much of my world continued to be a twilight world of my own making. I couldn't fathom out how to enter the other world the rest of society inhabited. It always appeared to be hovering behind a thin yet impenetrable veil. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.